At the dawn of a new year, we come to welcome hope for a new world. Let the darkness lift, to welcome a dawn of plenty with enough for everyone, and people ready to share. Let the day begin with new energy for the struggle to protect our children and to care for the vulnerable. Let the light shine to open a path to safety for all who are seeking home and longing for life. Let the sun rise on new talks and new resolve to end the bombing and the terror and to find solutions that will last. At the dawn of a new year, we come to declare our hope and to welcome a new world. Come, let's worship God. Good morning. My name is Tom O'Brien, and I am blessed to serve Memorial Congregational Church as pastor and teacher. And this morning, know that no matter who you are, no matter where you are physically, no matter where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. This morning, we are celebrating in communion together. So I invite you to take some time to grab a baked good and something to drink, or anything to eat, anything to drink. And later on in the service, we'll share in a meal together. And on Communion Sunday, we like to remind folks of the Deacons Fund. This is a fund that is available to members and friends of the church who need a little bit of extra financial assistance. So if you find that you are in need, please contact me or Sharon Colombo or Rick Hilpertz, the chairs of the diaconate. And if you find that you have a little bit of extra money to spare, we invite you to donate to the Deacons Fund to replenish and to help those in our congregation. On January 18th, we will join together on Zoom to talk about the next book in our book discussion series. We'll be reading Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. This is a science fiction / dystopian novel that takes place in the far-off year of 2024, but ends with a lot of hope. And it's a really good book, and we've had some wonderful discussions. So if you'd like to be a part of that discussion, please send me an email. We're still putting together our digital ministries task force. Right now we're looking for ideas about what has been great in the new digital world that we've experienced for the last 10 months or so. What have you really enjoyed? What do you think we should continue moving forward, even when the pandemic ends and we're able to gather together physically? Help us to figure out ideas of how we can continue to spread the word digitally, and then we'll figure out how to make that happen. And we always invite you to continue to sign up for email updates and make sure that you're connected with the church so that you know what's going on with us. And so now we continue throughout this season of Christmas as we worship God together.
Angels sing, glory to our newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
Please join me in prayer. God, I know you're still speaking to us, even in such a trying year that 2020 was. In last week's service, we heard the hymn, In the Bleak Winter, and that feels so appropriate. Not because of the weather so much, but more because of where so many of us have been in the last year. A recent service speaker reminded us that during the time that your son Jesus was alive, there were many challenges, then as well. Hunger, greed, dependency issues, ethnic wars, racism, and other issues that we have today. Yet as we celebrate the birth of your son, we know hope is alive. When we listen to and contemplate your lessons, we know that this bleak winter will yield to a better time, a time of hope. Hope in each other, hope in those around us, in our communities and our world. Hope that we all come back to realizing that we are in this life together and we are stronger together. Hope that goodwill vanquishes evil. Hope that we as individuals can make a difference. Hope that just as Jesus stayed behind when his family left Jerusalem so he could listen, learn, and converse with the spiritual leaders in the temple, that we continue to listen and learn from you, God, who is still speaking to us. Amen. Each Sunday we renew our promises to one another and to God. If these words are unfamiliar to you, please feel free to listen. Please join me now as we recite together the covenant of Memorial Congregational Church. In the love of truth and in the spirit of Jesus, we unite for the worship of God and the service of humanity. And as the Lord's free people, we agree to walk together in all God's ways, made known or to be made known to us.
God's way is the way of peace. We look for peace in the new world. We look for the peace of a new day. We look for peace throughout the Christmas season. And peace is possible when we allow God to work through us. So I invite you now to take a deep breath, to take in the peace of God. And hold your hand up to the screen. Take that peace and send it out to those who are watching with you now, and receive the peace that they send to you. Take that peace and bring it into your heart.
Santo, Santo, Santo,
This morning's reading comes from the book of Luke, chapter 2, verses 41 through 52. The parents of Jesus used to go every year to Jerusalem for the feast of Passover. And when Jesus was 12, they went up for the celebration, as was their custom. As they were returning at the end of the feast, the child Jesus remained behind in Jerusalem, unbeknownst to Mary and Joseph. Thinking Joseph was in their caravan, they continued their journey for the day, looking for him among their relatives and acquaintances. Not finding Jesus, they returned to Jerusalem in search of him. On the third day, they came upon Jesus in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. All who heard Jesus were amazed at his understanding and answers. When Mary and Joseph saw Jesus, they were astonished, and Mary said, "Son, why have you done this to us? You see that your father and I have been so worried looking for you." Jesus said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know I had to be in my Abba's house?" But they didn't understand what he told them. Then Jesus went down with them to Nazareth and was obedient to them. Mary stored these things in her heart, and Jesus grew in wisdom, in years, and in favor with God and people alike. Can you all hear me now? Good morning again. Happy New Year. My name is Miss Stephanie. I am the Minister of Youth and Families here at Memorial Congregational Church. I was just laughing about how I'm causing some technical difficulties this morning. We often talk about Jesus' miraculous birth and the shepherds and the wise men coming to see Jesus and worship him and go tell all the world about Jesus. And then we skip ahead and we talk about Jesus' ministry with the disciples and his teachings and his death and resurrection. But we miss this important piece in the middle where Jesus was a child. Jesus was a little boy, just like some of you are. I think about my kids going to Sunday school and learning and teaching them about God's love. And Jesus probably went to Sunday school or some kind of school type thing where children learned about God. I don't know what they called it back then. It might have been Sunday school of faith exploration. I'm not sure. But they used to travel from Nazareth to Jerusalem every year for a festival, and they would go to the temple and learn about God's love. So they didn't learn about Jesus. They learned about God's love at the time. But we forget that Jesus was just a boy, just like any other little boy. He probably got into trouble. He probably had fights with his siblings. Did you know that Jesus probably had at least 6 brothers and sisters? He wasn't an only child. We don't often think about that. But they were traveling from Nazareth to Jerusalem, and they had the festival, and then they were going home. And when they traveled with their families. So aunts and uncles and cousins and friends, they all traveled together. So when they were on their way back home, Mary and Joseph didn't realize that Jesus wasn't with them until an entire day later. Now, as a parent, if you've ever lost your child in the grocery store or at the park or anything like that, or as a child, if you've ever lost your parent, you have this moment of panic and you get really scared and frightened. You might get angry, and you're sad, and you want to find the person that you've lost. So Mary and Joseph, they freaked out, and they were like, "Where's Jesus? Do you know where Jesus is?" So they traveled all the way back to Jerusalem to find Jesus in the temple. Jesus was in the temple talking with the leaders. And Jesus had this great understanding of who God is and who God was. Much greater than any of our understandings, especially for a 12-year-old child. So just a reminder that Jesus was a little boy, just like many of you are, and he had parents just like you do, and he made mistakes, and this scared his parents, and luckily Mary and Joseph were very understanding. And they said, "Jesus, okay, it's time to go home." So they took Jesus back home with them. And he went on to do great things. Anyways, I hope you all have a great Sunday. And I will see you again soon.
2020 is over. Thank God. We've endured a pandemic with death, disruption, and grief. We've endured a tumultuous and divisive political situation. We've been awakened painfully to our racial divide and inequities. We have experienced unprecedented weather and other disasters. But it's now 2021. A new president is about to be inaugurated. Black Lives Matter signs are all over the place. People are getting vaccinated. Economic help is coming. We are onwards and upwards, baby. Surely, if there is a God, progress towards justice, goodness, and life should work that way. Surely, the message should be that if we follow Jesus effectively, life will be steady and sure improvement. But here we are between Christmas Day, when we celebrate the miracle of Jesus' birth, and Epiphany, when we celebrate the world coming to see who Jesus is. And we're reading the only gospel story about Jesus that takes place in the years between his babyhood and his ministry. Luke says that at age 12, right at the cusp of becoming an adult, Jesus knew who he was. Yet Jesus doesn't stay in Jerusalem preparing a quick launch into ministry. Surprisingly, the world waits to hear from Jesus, waits for the powerful to be brought down and the lowly lifted up. This Christmas, my 1-year-old grandson discovered the joy of walking the circle in my house. Dining room to hallway, hallway to kitchen, kitchen to dining room. Theo loved it. His parents found his disappearances terrifying. There were shouts of, "Where's the baby?" and then mad dashes to catch up with him. So I understand Mary and Joseph's frantic searching for Jesus, Mary's rebukes when he is found, and they're bringing him home. Mary may treasure what she saw and heard, but her natural protective instincts say, I'm going to keep him safe. As for Jesus, well, I've been 12 and I've raised 2 sons. So I know that 12 is a time when children start moving away from their parents, from their family. They start exploring who they are instead of who their parents expect them to be. They begin flexing intellectual muscles, but they don't always have good judgment. Jesus is typical. He responds to a desire, a hunger to learn, and he thoughtlessly pursues it. In the temple, Jesus blossoms as an engaged student, listening, answering questions, and asking his own. I expect that Jesus wanted to stay in the temple, learning the scriptures of his faith from the best of the best. But Jesus goes obediently home with his parents. Perhaps he's resentful, reluctant, or even sad. But it's 20 more years before he breaks away. It's easy to see those years as wasted. But in the poor little backwater town of Nazareth, with his parents and siblings, Jesus, says Luke, increased in wisdom. What happened? Well, Jesus spent years steeped in his faith tradition, probably going to the local synagogue with his father. He learned prayers and weekly celebrated the Sabbath with bread and wine. He got to experience the poverty around him, probably noticing the power and wealth inequities, certainly noticing the high taxes, which went to fund the Roman soldiers stationed around them instead of to help the local community. And then in his early 30s, Jesus responded to some tug or call or realization and left Nazareth, left his old life, embarking on a radical revolutionary path. But he took with him the wisdom gained during those 20 years. His model prayer, which we call the Lord's Prayer, is clearly based on Jewish prayers of his time. Our central sacred tradition of communion is easily recognizable as growing from his Sabbath tradition of ritually expressing thanks for and consuming wine and bread. Jesus' attitude towards the poor, his attitude towards the power and wealth structures of his day, all show the shaping of direct experience. I see in this story, a reminder that God doesn't expect, nor should we, that a good life will be all onwards and upwards toward full of direct action and obvious results. Even the life of God's Son doesn't work like that. Our lives are like waves or pendulums, moving naturally, if painfully, through different times. Following Jesus can mean following a call or a tug to take risks, walk a direct path, new path, explore new ideas, confront power, create new ways, have challenging dialogues, even break some relationships. It can, but like Jesus, sometimes the call or the nudge will be to a time of waiting, a time to follow God by returning home to someplace smaller and more restricted, but also more familiar, to old relationships, to nurture and relative safety, to experience and be bathed in traditions, to observe and ponder and be torn open by injustice and suffering. In 2020, most of us have walked this second path. We've been on a path of restriction, grief, and waiting. It has been and is a struggle. Please name and mourn fully without rating your struggle against those of others. Yes, some of us are lonely, restricted, and stressed, and some of us actually fear for our lives, fear imminent homelessness, fear for the suffering of our children. But instead of denying our own suffering, let's follow Jesus and grow in wisdom by being broken open by the suffering and injustice around us. This story of Jesus returning home with his parents reminds us that there are two kinds of life, that both are within God. Both need to be fully experienced. Both will bring pain. Both will bring growth if we live them fully. Neither is forever. A poem about Christmas from the theologian Howard Thurman speaks to me about this reality. It's called Christmas is Waiting to Be Born, where refugees seek deliverance that never comes, and the heart consumes itself if it would live, where little children age before their time, and life wears down the edges of the mind, where the old man sits with mind grown cold, while bones and sinew, blood and cell go slowly down to death, where fear companions each day's life, and perfect love seems long delayed. Christmas is waiting to be born. In you, in me, in all humankind. There are two kinds of life. Both are within God. Both need to be fully experienced. Both will bring pain, and both will bring growth if we live them fully. When years from now, our MCC 2020 time capsule is opened, its contents will remind us that our restricted and rather frustrating at times years in Nazareth were sacred ones. Jesus grew in wisdom in Nazareth, and so too can we and our institutions. Take time to experience the moments of goodness that are around you and be broken open by the suffering and injustice. For Christmas is being born. We are impatient for moving out, for the onward and upward of progress, and we need to listen for that call and respond when it comes. But for now, breathe. Christmas is waiting to be born.
When we approach this table of communion, we do so seeking a clean heart. Please join us now in the responsive prayer of confession. Before God, with the people of God, I confess to my brokenness, to the ways I wound my life, the lives of others, and the life of the world.
May God forgive you, Christ renew you, and the Spirit enable you to grow in love.
Amen.
Before God, with the people of God, we confess to our brokenness, to the ways we wound our lives, the lives of others, and the life of the world.
May God forgive you, Christ renew you, and the Spirit enable you to grow in love.
Amen. Blessed is our brother Jesus, who walks with us on the road of the world's suffering, who is known to us in the breaking of the bread. On the night of his arrest, Jesus took the bread and, after blessing it, broke the bread and gave it to his disciples, saying, "This is my body given to you."
In the same way, he took wine, and after giving thanks for it, he poured it out and gave the cup to his disciples, saying, "This is the cup of a new relationship with God, sealed with my blood. Take this and share it. I shall drink wine with you next in the coming kingdom of God."
Loving God, through your goodness, we have this bread and cup to offer, which earth has given and human hands have made. May we know your presence in the sharing of this bread, so that we may know your touch in all bread, all matter.
We celebrate the life that Jesus has shared among his community through the centuries and shares with us now. Made one in Christ and one with each other and our siblings around the world, we offer these gifts, and with them ourselves, a single, holy, living sacrifice.
Hear us, O Christ, and breathe your Spirit upon us and upon this bread and cup. May they become for us your body, vibrant with your life, healing, renewing, and making us whole. And as the bread and cup which we now eat and drink are changed into us, may we be changed again into you, bone of your bone, flesh of your flesh, loving and caring in the world. Amen.
So as we share this meal together, we invite you at home to use whatever you have available, to have some bread or crackers, some juice, some coffee, some tea. Together we share in this meal. Even though we aren't physically together, we are spiritually connected, and we share this meal together. The table of bread and cup are now ready. It is the table of company with Jesus and all who love him. It is the table of sharing with the poor of the world, with whom Jesus identified. It is the table of communion with the earth, in which Christ became incarnate.
So come to this table, you who have much faith, and you who would like to have more. You who have been here often, and you who have not been for a very long time. You who have tried to follow Jesus, and you who have failed. Come. It is here we are invited to meet Christ. These are the gifts of God for the people of God. Come, for all things are now ready. This is the bread of life.
This is the cup of blessing.
Giving thanks for God's gift of our community and for our meal together, let us pray the words that Jesus taught us to say together in the Lord's Prayer, as it is written in your bulletin, or using whatever words bring you comfort. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Christ my heart is turned not Lord, Christ the everlasting Lord. Wait in time, behold him come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Hail in flesh what God can see, hail incarnate deity. Pleased as man with man to dwell, Jesus Son, Emmanuel. All angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Hail the Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness. Light and life to all he brings, His living in his wings. While he raised his glory high, born not man, no more may die. Oh, to raise the Son of earth, or to goodness and unbirth. All angels sing, glory to the newborn King.
And now, may we go into 2021 with hope, remembering that Christmas is waiting to be born, and the blessing of the God of life be ours. The blessing of the loving Christ be ours. The blessing of the Holy Spirit be ours, to cherish us, to help us, and to make us holy. Amen.